So our second teller tonight was born and raised in the Pacific Northwest. He has been a renowned liar and verbal fabricator since the first grade. And while his teacher, Ms. Tooker, is very disappointed in him, more recently these knavish skills have earned him victory both at the Moth and at Synergy Story Slams. So Ms. Tooker might be damned, but you know, I'm kind of super proud of Pete Koschnick, so give him a warm welcome.
Hi there. My name is Pete Koschnick. I am from the Pacific Northwest, and Miss Tooker is damned, as far as I know. Everybody doing all right tonight? Good. Feeling good? I'm not. Thanks for asking. Wednesday, in a truly stupendous and graceful and stupid move, I was hanging drywall on the ceiling of my house, and I went backwards off a 5-foot scaffold. And I was really impressed with myself because I called up that 14-year-old boy who took judo classes way back when. And when I landed, I actually, what we used to call slapping the mat, which sort of redirects the energy, keeps your head from banging on the floor. Problem is, I'm not 14. And there was no mat. It was a bunch of drywall screws and some construction garbage. But I landed on my right glove handle, which is very well padded. I think you can see. But it really hurts. It really, really hurts. And if, frankly, someone else is coiling into my cables tonight, not me. I'll tell you that right now. I was impressed, though, man, that the carpenter that I hired to help me, as soon as he made sure I was alive, went right back. He picked up the screws and went right back to hanging drywall as I was laying there trying to catch my breath. I've been doing construction since I was 16, off and on. So it hasn't always been my full-time career, but it's always been my fallback career, so to speak. Pun intended, sorry. And because I can pretty consistently add 2 and 2 and come up with 4, I've usually been a lead carpenter. It's the guy who makes things square and makes sure everything, you know, I actually know what a hypotenuse is and what the Pythagorean theorem is, you know. And that's how you square things up in carpentry. And I've always put crews together over the years, whenever I've worked for a contractor. And ideally, to me, a crew is like the lead carpenter, me, because I can get stuff to within a 1/16 of an inch really well. And then I have a regular carpenter who knows all the tools, knows what he's doing, usually missing a finger. And he can get stuff, you know, to within an 1/8, and he can really knock it out. You know, then we got an assistant who's learning about the tools, learning what to do. He can only get stuff within a quarter or so, but he's still got all his fingers, so you're determining where he's going to end up. And then you have a gopher who runs around and gathers things and cleans up afterwards and all that kind of stuff. And it makes for a really tight group of people to work. But I've discovered over the years there's always one other guy. Usually a guy. Could be a girl, but it's usually a guy. And I asked my friend, Nine Finger Dave, who's a carpenter, what's that guy's job? And Dave said, oh, he's a pet. I said, what? He's a pet. And we were talking about a guy named Chris at the time. I was like, yeah, Chris, you know, he doesn't do anything, but he's kind of pleasant to have around. And if he's not here, you kind of miss him. And, you know, if you saw him this morning, you don't see him this afternoon, you got to wonder where he ran off to. And I realized my whole life, I've had these guys. My whole working career, I've had these guys. You know, when I grew up in Washington State, started working in carpentry, there was a guy named Randy. And Randy had like a really bad blonde mullet, and he stuttered. So it was like, Randy, we made fun of him mercilessly. But he was very, very charming. And when we go to the bar, he could always get us free drinks because he would charm the barmaid. When I lived up in Ohio, I had a guy named Donbo. He's a crack addict, but, you know, otherwise a pretty nice guy. It's one of those guys, you meet these guys in Ohio. He worked for U.S. Steel for 2 years. 20 years later, he was still waiting for his job to come back. And it just wasn't, you know. When I came down here, I met a guy named Tiny Bob. And actually, Dave introduced me to Tiny Bob. Tiny Bob really is tiny. He's like, I don't know, 4'6", something like that. He's just a real shrimpy little guy. My ex-wife has a better beard and mustache than he does, you know. And you know, kind of like Dombo, he's got a little chemical dependency problem. But I was so grateful that I heard that he'd gone into rehab. And we've all been praying for that. We all really like Tiny Bob, but you could never send Tiny Bob to the lumberyard because you weren't going to get the lumber. You'd probably never see your truck again, and definitely the money was just gone. And you'd find Bob. We found him one time down at the Ag Center during the fair. He was sleeping with a pig in one of those stalls, and he had on white jeans and a white jean jacket, which he'd obviously been wearing for a while. So we bundled him up and took him home. Women love him too, because they can just literally pick him up and carry him home. The way Bob ended up in rehab is like this. This is how I understand the story. He and his girlfriend were out partying one night. They were down in Biltmore Village and having a grand old time and legally and illegally enjoying themselves in the chemical world. And they got into a fight, and Bob is always getting into these fights with women. And, she smacked him around a little bit because he's tiny, and because she's from Madison County, and I guess that's how they handle it. Anyway, so he determined he was going to run away from home. This guy's 45. He's going to run away from home. He's going to jump a freight train down at the depot and just take off. So he stumbles down there in the dark, and he sees a freight car, and he thinks, oh man, I'm going to jump that car. So he starts running after it as fast as he can, faster, faster, faster. And you can see it getting closer and closer, and he jumped onto the back of it. Problem was, it was standing still. And he cold cocked himself. Just boom, he collapsed on the little siding, and he didn't realize, but he was all night, he just lay there, and the train started moving, and it was headed down to Charlotte. And when he came to, he was in Charlotte, and he was also missing about 3 teeth. He really smacked into that thing. So he got down there, and Tiny Bob has long ago figured out dentists are pretty free with the meds. So he's got a little bit of a dentist addiction, and he knows all the dental schools and all the dentists he's never been to before, and he can go to it like skip on a bill. So he goes to the dental school down there, and he gets some work done, but it still really hurts. He had the roots pulled. So he went to see his friend Bubba. I know Bubba. Bubba lives on the west side there, in an area called Freedom Avenue, I believe, in an old apartment house. And Bubba is a freelance pharmacist. So you might be acquainted with these guys. He's got a wide range of things that are available. His wife is actually used to work as an anesthesiologist, nurse, and not anymore. And Bubba has 4 kids, and they live in this little walk-up apartment, 6th floor, in this really lousy old apartment building. The elevator long ago stopped working and caught on fire, and so they just left it there. So the whole place smells faintly of like burning gym socks and Campbell's soup, vegetable soup. And because Bubba's got 4 little boys, they run up and down the stairs, they call him the rack and everything. Everybody hates Bubba except Bubba's customers. Tiny Bob goes over and he knocks on the door. Bubba's like, yay, little brother, come on in, we'll take care of you. Everything's going to be fine. And so, Bubba shared, and Bob indulged. Something red, something yellow, something white, something in a gel cap. Chase it down with Jack Daniels, and before you know it, Tiny Bob was comatose. Just sitting on the couch, staring. And Bubba was still going about his business and doing things. It was a school day, so the kids went there. And suddenly he realized the kids were going to come home from school, and here was Tiny Bob sitting on the couch, comatose. He had to do something with him, so he did the most logical thing. He opened his door, picked up Tiny Bob, put him in the hallway, closed the door. Tiny Bob teetered and fell over and hit the neighbor's door. The neighbor, who's a little man, said, oh my God, Bubba's boys are picking on my door again. Next thing you know, they're going to be tagging it again, and I'll have to repaint it. He whipped open the door and he said, boy, get away from there. And he punched Tiny Bob. And Tiny Bob went down the stairs to the landing. Oh my Lord, I've killed a child. But, I don't want to go to jail. So he went down to the landing and he opened up the window that led onto the air shaft in the middle of the building. Looked around, he took Tiny Bob and tossed him out the window. Tiny Bob fell to the bottom of the air shaft. And at the bottom there was a big culvert for the water and the trash to come out. And the landlord had been really smart. He'd run that into the alleyway behind there and put a trash can down there. So Tiny Bob and he's tiny, right down that little pipe, right into the alley, boom, hit the dumpster. Now, There's a bar next door, and the guy was in there, cutting lemons and limes, and he heard that dumpster go bang. Thought, all those kids are throwing M80s in my dumpster again. I want to go out there. And he goes out, and there's Tiny Bob. He's halfway in the dumpster. His back legs are hanging out. And he goes, "Get out of there, you dear son of a..." And yanks him out and throws him to the ground. And he goes, "Oh my God, I've killed him." Oh, this is infanticide, this poor little boy. I got to open the bar in a few minutes. I got to get rid of this boy. So he drags him down the alley, and there's a Catholic church on the other corner. So he goes in the back door of the Catholic church, and he takes him in. And where can I stash him? I could tuck him under a pew, but put him in the nave. And, nobody's going to be coming in for services today because no one goes to the Catholic church anymore. Put him in the nave. No one will see him. So he puts him in the nave up against this pillar, and there's the holy water there. And Tiny Bob, he's coming to a little bit. And he sways and he falls down face first into the holy water. Just then the Monsignor comes walking through. Bubba's boys are drinking out of the holy water. So he walks up behind Tiny Bob, he grabs him by the scruff of the neck and goes, "You want to drink out of my water? You drink out of my water, boy!" And he throws him to the ground, and Tiny Bob is passed out. Oh my God. I've drowned a child. And I'm a man of God. I'd swear if I could. I wonder if I can hide him under a pew. No, I can't do that. I have to confess. So he picks up Tiny Bob in his arms. Tiny Bob's hair is lank and falling back. It's wet. He's dripping. He carries him out the front of the church. Just as he gets out to the street, the police car is patrolling by and goes, "Officer, officer, I have to confess. I've killed this child. I've killed this child." He falls to his knees, screaming in the pain of his heart. The bartender hears him. He comes out and he sees the Monsignor with Tiny Bob. And he goes, "No, no, sir. You didn't kill him. I did. I killed him." Bubba's neighbor happened to be going to the grocery store at the time. He saw this tragedy. He went, "Oh no, it was me. I killed him." Cop got down on the sidewalk and went to Tiny Bob and he went, Tiny Bob went, "I gotta get sober." And he got up and he went to treatment. And so we're all really happy. Thank you very much.